The land of Nosgoth has always been one of the starring roles in the Legacy of Kain series, with the basis of the setting set forth by the finely crafted world building and complex mythologies created by Dennis Dyack and Ken McCulloch. Since the release of Blood Omen Legacy of Kain in 1996, the land of Nosgoth has retained a distinctive character and a fairly consistent layout, built upon the hand-drawn maps created for Blood Omen. A pair of maps were released with the game, one available in the in-game map screen, and another packaged in a variety of sizes with the official guide and PC releases, which illustrated the game world and came to influence the layout of later games. However, this layout was not always so set in stone, and as the Blood Omen Alpha shows, that land could have looked very different. In the Blood Omen Alpha, the world map and the entire layout of the game is staggeringly different from the retail release. The Alpha has hundreds of areas that were greatly changed to render them almost unrecognisable, or were reshuffled and changed locations. I've previously created a spreadsheet showing just how many rooms were altered in the last few months, which we'll add in the description, but the upshot is that the Alpha contains no less than 90 previously unknown map areas, and over 90 that have extensive major changes. The main Overland area alone has at least 17 map areas that are changed or new, and many are reshuffled or positioned differently to render the layout of Nosgoth as completely different to later maps. In addition, many dungeons are rearranged or moved, and there are several that are entirely unknown. Some of these appear partially complete or unfinished, and many lack special items. These changes alter the locations of many landmarks, and end up giving the maps and layout of Nosgoth a completely different look, ultimately suggesting that the view of Nosgoth we've come to know in the hand-drawn maps was something hastily added at the last minute. Instead, the world map of the Alpha is in fact something else which might be familiar. Eagle-eyed fans may have spotted a somewhat unusual stretched map of Nosgoth in the retail release, on the floor of the Heaven area of Avernus Cathedral, and a similar version in the Nemesis Castle. The Alpha reveals that this was the actual in-game map of Nosgoth, as originally intended, and the layout of the area actually matches the world map a lot better than the retail version. A nice touch is that the map starts off dark, but as you visit areas, they're illuminated, and a 3D version of the area and its landmarks are put on the map. Interestingly, one landmark that's missing from the map is the Keep of the Nemesis, which is not present in the upper right corner. The LK lore and continuity nerds may also notice another interesting wrinkle to this. The maps from Avernus and the Nemesis went on to influence the creation of world maps for the multiplayer spin-off Nosgoth, and in particular, the canned Lore Council map of the Soul Reaver era Nosgoth had been heavily inspired by its layout, with the implied suggestion that those alternate visions of the world may have been an elaborate troll by Mobius to subtly taunt Kain with a vision of his decaying future empire. Either way, it's pretty pleasing that a spin-off fan-sourced lore team attempting to reconcile differing versions of the world map within an official project ended up unknowingly highlighting what was the original layout all along. While a lot has been discarded or changed during the course of development, and the progression from alpha to retail, it's interesting to see what's been added. For example, some of the more interesting areas of the retail game, such as the Lost City, the Altar of Hashak-Gik, and the HMCS Bitter, are not present at all in the alpha, suggesting those places are later additions. In their place are a number of extended early areas, like the Expanded Cemetery, whose rooms occupy the same map codes as the Bitter, Lost City and the Altar would eventually occupy. Just to complicate matters, the second Mausoleum map area in the retail version is created from parts of the Expanded Cemetery, just moved to a new map code and combined together. The same situation is also true of numerous smaller areas, with a number of boss preambles, forge back doors, village interiors, save rooms, alternative routes, and smaller bonus areas and caves only added after the alpha. The bitter set piece also has another interesting alpha wrinkle. While the area itself was discovered in the cataloguing project as part of fan recreation Blood Omen Alpha in 2010, legitimate access to the area was only uncovered in 2020, thanks to some repeated enigmatic hints by creator Dennis Dyack regarding invisible switches in the corners of the world. Thanks to the later map rearranging, those corners were only actually corners in the alpha versions, and discovery of the alpha and its layout helped finally unlock legitimate access to the bitter. One thing that does influence the map in the alphas and the release version is the intended order of progression. As later series director Amy Hennig once commented, Blood Omen was originally intended to be a much more open world, with it technically possible to fight the Guardians in any order. Unfortunately, this feature was much reduced in scope, and by the time of the retail release, the game was a lot more linear. To be sure, there are still plenty of opportunities to explore the world, but the story is encountered in a set progression, and the Guardians must be encountered in a specific order. In the Blood Omen Alpha, however, this original open design is visible in a number of places, with it being possible to shortcut or bypass a number of important dungeons to continue to explore the world if the player so desires. And in many cases, these shortcuts meant sense in the context of the world. Some shortcuts and trails are notably unfinished, with a number of paths leading off the edge of the world, or otherwise apparently intended to link to others. Most of these result in crashes, but some give very clear signs as to the original intention. We'll go into more details and cover some of these map differences in later walkthrough videos. The developer's level select is a secret area that can be accessed in all builds of Blood Omen, that was created to allow developers to more easily reach and test various locations in the game, effectively providing shortcut to the relevant areas. In the alpha and beta versions, the level select can be accessed easily by using the provided walkthrough walls button combination on the left side of Kain's crypt. Changes to the level select between builds are perhaps an indication of the changes to the world, but while there are numerous changes, the main structure and layout stay the same, although much of this may hint at developments that we'll discuss in later videos. Again, broken or not connected doorways can seriously hinder progress here. To start with, the lack of secrets means there is no secret section to the menu, and there are none of the small antechambers for ability number cards, as are seen in retail. The LSBAT entry relating to the Battle of the Last Stand is also missing, and the battle itself cannot be accessed. Another entry for it appears as part of the level area, but this can't be entered either. The BREN entry relating to the beginning of the game at the outdoor cemetery is replaced by NADA, which you'd assume would do much the same thing, only the door doesn't work. Onto the areas themselves, which are broken down essentially by story chapter, and the smaller dungeons within, usually by code relating to the Overland area and the dungeon items. For starters, OL1 gains entries CRT2 and CRT3 for the extra crypts seen in the cemetery. The doors are covered by decorations in the retail version. In OL2, the Lupo door, which didn't work in retail, does work in alpha. It leads to an area within the Prep's retreat and presumably relates to the cut character of Lupo the Butcher. OL3 has changes relating to the Repel dungeon reshuffle, with the alpha version reading SHAB, where in the final game it would read SH and relate to a different spell. More on that in a later video. The Repel reshuffle shows up again in OL5, where the original REPL door is found, relating to the original cut Repel dungeon. This door remains in the retail version, albeit unlabelled, but leads nowhere. OL8 has 3 subsections relating to the time period, and within these, a new door is added to the present era, with LAST relating to the Battle of the Last Stand added. The blank doorway remains in the final game, but is inaccessible. The boss area also has some changes, with entries after Azimuth for Bill and Vor added, which relate to the battle with William and the chess match with Vorador respectively. In the final game, the last boss entries instead read LST PLL, relating to Kain's final decision at the Pillars. Vor is marked, but blocked and inaccessible, and PRMT is added to indicate the final confrontation between Anacroth and Mortanius. Interestingly enough, there's also a minor reshuffle that goes on between the locations for the entries for Bill, Will and Nems, with some doors relating to the Nemesis actually pointing to Willendorf in the Alpha, a Will boss door pointing to Otmar rather than William the Just, and a previously unknown Bill boss door pointing to William in the Nemesis Keep. In the final game, the Bill door is deleted, and the other doors point towards their expected locations, but it's unclear if the reshuffle was hinting at a previous version of the story where Otmar could be 4, Otmar and William were one and the same, or simply that the Nemesis areas were unfinished at the time. Other changes to note in this area are the missing duplicate Pentalicia Tarot Spirit Forges, PRT-N2 and PNT-R3. These were put in for different time periods in the retail game, but are not used in the alpha, although those rooms do exist but are not connected. Strangely, a copy of the level select room can be found at the end of the map tile list with some minor differences. It's currently unclear how to access this version of the room. Join us next time as we begin the walkthrough of the Blood Omen Alpha, looking at the changes to Siegstall and the Cemetery.